Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Gentle Power. We are so excited to have Soumya on as our guest. And
what a beautiful name.
Yeah, what's the background for your name?
I'm from India, and Soumya is a Sanskrit word which it's supposed to mean gentle. So
gentle? Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Amazing. The name of our podcast for today: Soumya Power.
Soumya Power. So we have a special episode of Soumya Power. Well, Soumya, we'd love for you to share a bit about your background, and we'll just get right into it around power negotiations. But would love for you to share your experience and what you do.
And if you can weave into your background where power or negotiations come through. And actually, whenever we have a guest on our podcast that's from India, I can relate because I'm also from a developing country. It's a lot of hierarchical power dynamics culturally, and then negotiations. There's a lot of haggling and navigating low resources as you're growing up.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, and it was super cool to connect with you a couple of weeks ago. I am a product builder. I am building something for AI career changes to help people who are making intentional career pivots or breaking into new fields in today's job market. I actually started out in architecture and then spent about a decade exploring different fields, trying to find that elusive, meaningful work that actually felt exciting for me. And that's how I landed in product management for edtech startups. And then having personally experienced how difficult it was to navigate pivots and just figure out where I fit in, I quit my job a few months ago to build a tool that makes it easier for others. So that's a quick snapshot of what I've been up to the last couple of years. I also love interacting with people and students who are making career moves. So I do also coach people on the side. And Gertha, to your point on power and the role it plays. I think growing up in India, a lot of my initial years and schooling was in India, I 100% agree with you. I think even going to the grocery store or buying things in the evening, you're constantly having conversations and you're I'm going to give this much or it's going to be this much. You're trying to optimize for value in resource constrained environments, which interestingly is also, I guess, a product manager's job. I also worked in India for a couple of years before moving to the US. And I think that was very interesting because I was in my early 20s at that point of time. I had studied in India and in the US and then went back to work in India for a couple of years. It was also in social impact. So, I was working in very different environments than the corporate offices that you would think of. I think hierarchy plays a role there. And as a woman, I think ageism impacts you more than anything else in, traditional work environments. So I think these are things that you're never actually prepared for till you enter the workforce. So I think, you're learning a lot of your functional skills and technical capabilities, but you're not really learning how to navigate these conversations with stakeholders, clients, managers, many of whom tend to be much older than you, come with a lot of experience and are not used to seeing a 23-year-old talk back or have a different opinion in the room. So I think that was very interesting and just sort of navigating that. I'm sure I ruffled a lot of feathers in my early years, just before
a feather ruffler.
Without even understanding that I was doing it consciously, right? Because I think one thing I must say is I consider myself very lucky and I'm very grateful. I grew up in a family that always encouraged me to have the freedom to express my opinions.
That. Me too.
Thank you. Yeah.
I love it. I'm so grateful now. Yes.
Super, super grateful to my parents for creating that environment. So I think I just never thought about it in a workplace setting of how maybe, you have to be more mindful of how you're putting your thoughts across or you're pushing back with someone. So that was a very interesting learning experience early on in my career.
Yeah. Wait, let me interrupt you very quickly. Did you negotiate your salary or your offers in India?
I don't think I negotiated my salary or offer, but a lot of my day-to-day work, right? It was also, I was doing something that I was discovering and kind of creating my scope on the go. So it was a new unit in an organization. So it was very interesting just sort of learning to collaborate with people from very different backgrounds, sort of, creating space for myself in a room full of 10 people who are what are you doing here? And why do we need you again? Right? My job was product innovation. I was learning what that meant. I was trying to like get people to work with me on, making changes. People don't love changes. It's always difficult when you're like going beyond your comfort zone. So it was a lot of like push and pull. Many days I was not in a good space, I would say, right? Like 7 p.m., just sort of going home and figuring out how I can do things better. But I think that certainly taught me to think a lot about what value do I bring to the table when I'm in a room, right? Like I think I think in some ways maybe you might agree this is a core part of negotiation, is understanding who you are, why you belong in a room, and what is that unique point of view that you bring, which can help solve that problem in a better or different way. And I think that figuring that out then really helps you in everything downstream from there.
Yes, so agree with that. I had a CEO client tell me recently that, wow, you're like a psychologist to me. And I was like, I guess you're right. I mean, we've been told that a lot. And I was thinking, why is she saying this right now? Because usually I get that feedback because I'm kind of hand holding them through the anxiety of a negotiation where they're waiting for the other party to get back to them. And I'm like, it's okay that they're making you wait a few, hours or days. They just need to align with other teams and all that. But that's not what this CEO client was facing. She was preparing to go into a negotiation. And I realized it was because I was helping her with her own, it's beyond mindset. It's like her own understanding herself, sitting with discomfort and all that. And yeah, I do feel a little bit like a psychologist. And I realized on that call, a big part of negotiations is the work you're doing with yourself. And I love what you said. It's about understanding yourself, who you are, what you bring to the table. And that's why as soon as we get a new client, we ask them what their priorities are. And almost always, they're not very clear on their priorities. Most of our clients are negotiating job offers. You would think it's, I want more money. But no, it's so much more than that. It could be money, it could be title, it could be ownership, visibility, level, and all that. And very often that comes down to how well I will be respected, what will that look like on my resume, how it will affect my career progression. Yeah. There's so much more to it that's more identity related than just, I just want more money.
Yeah, it just struck me while you were saying that. And like, I think based on my personal experience and the work I've done with clients, I think part of that identity discovery is also giving yourself grace, right? Hey, I might be making mistakes here and I might mess up some of these conversations and negotiations, but it's okay. I'm learning and figuring out, and there's going to be the next conversation where I can improve it. And I think in a job search sort of scenario or like career development scenario, the stakes are so high. Sometimes we are very critical of ourselves. And I think just sort of giving that grace and empathy to ourselves of like, we are also figuring this out on the go as things happen. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I love that because our approach is very cordial, kind, professional, thoughtful. So I love that you brought up grace. So it's all very compassionate. And honestly, our face level mission is to kind of equalize the world a little bit, like so that it's not as, whoever has the upper hand can just strong arm you into accepting the deal that they offer you. Kind of like a company offers you whatever they want and then you just have to accept it. But the second mission we have that we haven't quite explicitly stated is to rebrand is probably not the right word, but it's like rethink negotiations as this very collaborative and kind process. Let's make each other better off. So I guess the first one would be fairness. I love fairness and justice. And then the second one would be kindness and collaboration. Those are our company missions that just came up right now. But
which is fantastic.
Thank you.
Soumya, so you said that you work often with a lot of career switchers, so people who are going into other industries. And as you were talking, it made me think, those who are career switching probably go into that experience assuming they have less power just because they're now in this brand new space. they have less experience. What we have seen also is those who are career switching, them believing they have less power usually translates into them giving away a lot of leverage, whether that's like in the salary negotiation or maybe even within the job. Like they feel like they're out of their depth or in rooms where everyone else, it's almost that imposter syndrome aspect, right? So when you work with clients, how do you coach them around this power aspect to maybe have them rethink the assumptions that they have, that they don't really have the authority or the power to be able to engage with people on an equal playing field?
Oh my God, I love this question. I don't know if you can tell, but like my eyes just started getting so excited. This is so true. I have seen this with literally every client that I've worked with and across different stages of your career, whether you're a recent graduate who just like entering the workforce or you're someone who has like 15 years of experience, proven, impact across industries, big companies, and you're now trying to enter a new space, right? Across the board, I have seen people doubt their impact and work so much, and I think it's very deep rooted. And then a lot of it is also, Gerta, to your point, cultural conditioning. What your upbringing was like culturally, how do you think about, things like identity, self-pride, self-esteem. I think these things matter in how you view yourself when you're sitting down for a negotiation. But what I've found really helpful is, first and foremost, understanding that the negotiation doesn't begin when you're halfway through your interviewing process for a new job, but actually day one when you decide you want to do something different for yourself, right? And it starts with inner work in understanding who you are, what's awesome about you. So I invariably end up spending the first several conversations and months, depending on how long we are working, just helping them feel great about their achievements. And as someone who's on and off struggled with imposter syndrome and I have anxiety, just all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
I think I get it. It's so difficult for people to often write down what are 10 things that they are proud about, right? In the career they are coming from. And especially when they are entering a new space, how do all of these then translate to skills and competencies or unique points of view that they can bring to the new role. So I think the first part is just sort of figuring that out and believing that for yourself. And the moment that clicks in someone, like you can see the change in their conversation, in their body language, how they're sitting in the room, the way they're able to have that conversation with a prospective hiring manager or that company. So I think that's the pivotal thing that I'm trying to, make happen in a lot of these conversations early on. So helping people figure out how to position themselves, and a lot of it comes down to like career storytelling, right? Why you, why now, why this industry or company and role, and how can you then make that, how can you unlock awesome stuff for them and for yourself? And I think once that is clear, it then translates to all your profile assets, your resume, or all of those things, but also then your conversations and interviews. It's not a nice thing, but it's a very real thing that happens. If you're someone changing careers, coming with 10 years of experience, you might still be considered a fresher or someone starting from scratch in that new industry.
Yeah, that's very true in product too. I remember throughout my tech career, it was like you could have 10 years as in product operations, product marketing, but if you wanted to go into product management, you had to, in many of big companies, you have to start as an associate product manager. Even if even if you've been working at the company for a long time, even if you're like, mid-career yourself.
Yeah. And that's such a big pain, right? So I think there it's about helping people figure out what are their leverage points. It could be unique domain expertise that they're bringing. Maybe they're just moving roles, but in the overall domain of healthcare or fintech or, enterprise SaaS or something that they can show they understand this space, this customer, the workflows, the way the industry works. And then that helps them negotiate better offers. Maybe it's not the title or pay, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's, learning opportunities. Maybe it's the kind of, personal benefits and flexibility that they are able to get in today's day and age. So I think it's a mix of figuring that out, but it all starts with why you and what do you bring uniquely.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of the work that you do with your clients is the narrative building aspect. And I think that as you're talking, I'm realizing I'm reminded that the narrative aspect of your candidacy is, I think, even more important than it was in previous markets. Understanding the narrative for yourself, writing it down, what are the 10 things that are awesome about me, to give yourself confidence. But when you also have a very cohesive narrative, you're giving the recruiter, you're giving the hiring manager the story to tell amongst the interviewing hiring team why this person is the one that should be chosen. So if you're going into the interviews with a really strong narrative, a very compelling story as to why it makes sense that you should be the candidate that gets chosen, that makes it easier for the people who will be making the decisions to, if they have that strong narrative, then you're just making that decision easier, right? So I feel like that narrative aspect is so important on both ends, like for yourself for the confidence building part, but also for the hiring team, you're basically handing them the story as to why you should be the one that's chosen, right?
That's very true. Yeah, because I mean, today recruiters and hiring managers are like inundated with thousands of applications, especially early to mid-career roles within like hours of sending a job out. So I think if you can help them connect the dots, that really helps. And also you're helping them see the value you can bring from day one, which I think really matters. So instead of being a generic candidate who can say, I can maybe do something in some time for your company, you're like, this is specifically the type of problems I can add value in. This is the proven expertise I already have working on these kind of problems, and that's why you should hire me.
Yeah, especially in a tougher job market like we are in right now, there are, as you said, there are so many applicants to a job that by the time they whittle down to the final list of candidates, everyone is more than meets the requirements, the qualifications.
Yeah.
And so the thing that really sets you apart is your narrative, and also if they think that they'll like working with you, like if it's a good culture fit, if they think you'll be a good team fit.
Yeah.
The superpower I would add on top of like what you just said, right? Like, because everyone is very similar and has great expertise, I think it is if you really love that space. And that's something that can come out during your narrative building. You're like, I am obsessed or insanely passionate about this particular industry or problem for some particular weird reason, right? That is, it's just, people love that, right?
Yeah.
And you will also enjoy working a lot more in that case.
You actually touched on two of our main worksheets that we give our clients.
Okay.
I loved when you said, come up with 10 things you're proud of, and then you said why you love the space. We actually ask our clients, as soon as they join, we give them first, what are your priorities? And then we dig deeper into them together, because like I said, they often don't truly realize what's behind their priorities. And then we say, make a list of why you would be a great fit for this role. And this ties into, I just love that you said the 10 things you're proud of, because a lot of things are transferable. So let's say you're proud of how you were so good at cross-functional, let's say you were a product marketing manager and you were so good at aligning cross-functional partners and you were proud of that. Well, that is so transferable to product management, for example. And so like if you make that list of 10 things you're proud of, you can now use it to, as you're changing careers, to like, well, I would be a great fit for this role because a lot of the things I'm proud of are related. And then the second worksheet that we ask them to fill out is why do you want this role specifically? And we think it's very critical in negotiations to show a lot of excitement about the role, the team, the company, the hiring manager, and be very specific, not generic things that you could have said for any other company. So we're very aligned on those.
Yeah, I think doing your research about that company really helps, and like industry, and over time you develop sort of a unique point of view on why things are happening the way they are in that particular industry or niche, and that comes out in the conversations.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think I would be very turned off when I've been on the other side, when things are when the candidate says very generic things like because of course we're talking about high achievers, and it's not every job is interchangeable. Cool. I want to make sure we hit on the questions we really want to ask you. Do you have any hot takes on power or negotiations?
I think my hot take would be what we've been talking about throughout, which is like negotiation doesn't actually start when you're doing halfway through the job interviews, but really day zero when you're figuring out your entire career mind map, who you are, where you can add value, and sort of seeing where you've already done impact and then taking that from there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that.
We try to educate our clients and our listeners that negotiations always start much earlier than people think. And I love when you said this, because people should be thinking about this even before the conversation starts,
Yeah.
right? So what are you doing to prepare your narrative, how you are presenting yourself that will retain or increase your leverage for once the actual trading or like the above the table negotiations really start happening. I'm reminded of this, I think it's like a Navy SEAL quote about how we don't rise to the occasion, we fall back on our training or we fall back on our preparation, right?
Did you
Yeah,
learn that
yeah.
in the military too? Alex was in the U.S. Air Force.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I think it was maybe I first heard that when I was in the military.
Yeah.
And so, because in the military, it's always about training, making sure that you're prepped, because you don't know
Yeah.
when you will need to all of a sudden go off into a mission or whatnot, right?
It's implied in the
yeah, so it's just the way that things are built. We're always training, preparing, making sure that we're current on top of what our skills are or our domain expertise is. And this is so applicable to those who are career switching, to those who are applying to jobs. You want to do all the preparation before you're actually in the room where the asks are being made or you're asking for more or whatnot, right? Because the chance of you saying the perfect thing that will lead to the best results or the optimal results at the time when it's happening is very little if you haven't thought deeply about it before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I wanted to squeeze in a question that just came up from our conversation. So I'm curious if you have noticed any differences in negotiating in India versus in the US. And I do want to caveat that I get this question a lot from potential clients who are like, well, I'm based in whatever city or country, and do you have practice with these negotiations? And I often tell them, like, look, even within the US, there's huge differences between like negotiating in New York versus Ohio versus California, or even within California, negotiating with Netflix versus Google versus Meta versus a startup or a venture capital fund and all that. So, I mean, in a way, I'm giving you my answer, which is there's so much variance across different scenarios and circumstances that I don't necessarily think it's a much bigger difference across cultures, especially with globalization, and we're all consuming similar content. There's, a lot of companies operate in different countries, but I am curious, I'm sure there are some differences. I'm curious to get your take on that.
Sure. Okay. I've been taking notes because I don't remember things.
Of course, let me take notes too.
I love that. So I think the core principles are very similar, of course, right? Like we are humans, and all over the world. But I think also culturally there are big differences in communication styles, right? So I think that somehow plays a role in the workplace. And again, this might just be my experience and, with the people I've worked with, so it may not be more universal than that. But I do think that I'm trying to make sure I find the right words for this. But essentially, I think what I've seen in India is, it's everyone's very welcoming, and, it's almost like it's a family in the workplace as well, right? And there are pros and cons to that when you think about it that way. So I think would be the biggest difference. People also tend to be, I think a lot more connected and straightforward when it comes to what needs to get done and how do we work together to do this. I think that's just how communication and collaboration happens. So I think what I personally experienced was being mindful of that and how you have to prove yourself and create that sort of impact for that deeper trust over time. It's a little harder to gain that, I would say. But apart from that, I think the core principles of negotiation or working together are very similar. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's something else. To the conversation we were having just before this, I think something that struck me was part of the narrative and preparing yourself for negotiation, I think, is also understanding what to say no to. Because I think often when you are trying to, change careers or figure out how you want to level up and things like that. When you identify where you can add value, it's also about accepting maybe these are some other scenarios where I would not be a good fit or I can't add that much value. And having that kind of focus to your work. And I think that plays a big role for downstream negotiation.
Yeah, I think what you said really made me, I feel like the communication styles of negotiating in the US and then in India, but now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like the US is the exception. And because I think the rest of the world is often a lot more direct. Especially like in places like Europe and stuff. But in the US, the way that you there's a lot of kind of like padding with, I don't want to say like beating around the bush.
I think that's your California.
So this is like a California negotiation.
People are very nice to each other.
New York, they're not indirect.
No, but I feel like you need, when you negotiate here in the US, you have to kind of, maybe it's around like the narrative building aspect, or you kind of have to continue to share additional things, open and close with the pleasantries. Maybe in Europe, like some of our European clients, you're negotiating with companies that they're just way more like kind of yes, no, or things like that. But I think the main point though, regardless of kind of what the styles are, as long as you stick to the first principles of the negotiations, these things are kind of universal across the board, right?
Yeah. That is 100% true.
Nice. Our final question before we wrap it up is, do you have any particular examples of a negotiation you've been through, how it went, what happened, any takeaways, or a power dynamic? It could be with a tough manager, a coworker, anything like that.
I think it's sort of like a mega question, putting together all negotiations I've done in life so far, which have had mixed success rates. I think the fundamental shift for me was like, initially I used to think it's a one-time conversation, right? It's like I ask for something, I hear something back, and that's it. And I either got what I wanted or I lost that conversation.
That's a dangerous assumption people have that we've had to help people unlearn a lot.
Yeah, and such a common one, right?
Yeah,
and I think over time I've realized the first no is not always a no. You can continue the conversation, look at it from their point of view. That's the other thing too. Like, I think early on I'm sure I still do this. When you're really excited about something, you are only thinking about your point of view and why this makes sense for you and what you want to, leverage out of this conversation. But I think also thinking how it works for them truly makes it a good collaboration. And that can also make negotiations move much better. So I would say like, that is something that's gone better. Interestingly, I think I've learned this more from personal experiences, just like working with different people in real life, right? Service providers and so on. But yeah, it certainly works in the workplace too.
Do you happen to remember any specific examples of how you learned it with service providers?
Oh my God. Trying to think. I'm sure it was like during one of these moves that I had to make, trying to move an entire house full of things, and you're like trying to negotiate, hey, can we also fit this in? Can we do it on a certain date?
Yes.
You're going back and forth with them, and then you're realizing, it's not about, I think you used that word before, it's not about either person just like strong-arming the other person. It's really understanding, hey, they have constraints too, and then there's things that I want, so like how do we arrive at a midpoint that works for both of us? Yeah.
And a key way of arriving at that is information gathering. A lot of people don't realize that a key component of negotiations is information gathering. You can do it directly. You could be like, what are your priorities? Or you could kind of strategically ask the right questions to figure out what their priorities are.
And I love your point about how a negotiation, it's not just a single conversation, or it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And we have said this on previous episodes about the concept of infinite games. So you're negotiating this thing now, but you don't know what additional conversations are in the future, or if there will be other negotiations that your conversation today may be impacting that. Or if you're negotiating with a company, who knows if those people, you're going to encounter them in your career. There's a good chance you will, because the further you go in your career, like the working world gets smaller and smaller. Like, people change companies all the time. So I think that's such an important point to emphasize, that the concept of infinite games. Like, this isn't just happening in a vacuum, but it could be impacting things later down the road, right?
Yeah. Especially when emotions are high.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? With a lot of tough conversations, right?
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that people have that misconception around, instead of seeing it as infinite games or multiple rounds, but only asking once, because I have a hypothesis that they've been burned before. When they asked multiple times, the other party was like, I'm not doing this anymore, or something like that. And I think so my hypothesis is people see it as a one-time thing because they've been burned before when they've done it more than one time. But continuing my hypothesis is that the reason they may have been burned is because the other party overreacted because of not of how it was handled. However, you have incorporated that into your sort of algorithms, like, I shouldn't ask more than once. So just to make this more concrete, we have clients who say, I don't want to get my offer rescinded. I don't want to negotiate, or like, I don't want to negotiate more than once or at all. And we say, look, if you're just asking very gently, kindly, professionally, and they are like, you know what, we're going to take the offer away, that's an overreaction. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have asked. That actually probably saved you years of trauma at this workplace.
That's true. Yeah. That's a good way of thinking about it. Like, hey, you didn't make a mistake. It was more like, wouldn't have worked out if they couldn't have a conversation with you on this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any final thoughts on your end? Otherwise, where can people find you? And we'll put it in the show notes.
I can drop my link later, but we are happyhustle.lovable.dev. It's an AI career tool that's being built as we speak. So would love anyone who wants to share their career struggles with us so that we can build a tool that helps make it easier for them.
Great. Yeah, and we'll also share your LinkedIn as well, so people can connect with you and learn more about your work.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I learned a lot about negotiations through this call, and I am negotiating another cross-country move right now, so I'm going to find it helpful.
Yeah. Where are you moving to?
Actually, not cross-country, but cross-continent, because I'm going to London.
Oh,
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is definitely pretty far.
Yeah. A loss for California, but a win for Europe.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Awesome. Okay, Soumya and everyone, our audience, I couldn't wait to close with this just from when we started. Thank you for tuning in to Soumya Power.
Oh my God. That's
that's the name
Oh
of our
my
podcast.
God.
Yeah, this is the special episode with its own special title.
I'm having second thoughts on having revealed that.
Yeah, we love it.
Thank you so
my
much
God.
for joining us. It was a real pleasure to have you on.
Yes, and thank you for
Thank you
your
so much for connecting.
very kind and gentle aura.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.